My brother-in-law beat me up, bloody face, shoulder out of place. My sister just shrugged and said, "You should have signed the loan." All because I refused to co-sign their mortgage. I stumbled to my parents' house, begging for help, then collapsed. What happened next left even the police shocked. I never ever thought the day would come when my own sister, the one who was supposed to be my protector, would stand there and watch me bleed. Her eyes were cold, her voice chilling as she uttered the words that would shatter my entire world. "You should have just signed the mortgage." My name is Audrey, I'm 32, and for as long as I can remember, Natalie was my anchor. 5 years my senior, she was the big sister who chased away playground bullies, patiently helped me with homework, and guided me through all the awkward teenage years. We grew up in a modest neighborhood in Michigan, with parents who worked incredibly hard to give us a good life. Dad, an economics teacher, and Mom, a nurse, ingrained in us the values of family, education, and above all, financial wisdom. Always have 6 months of expenses saved, Dad would drum into us, helping us open our first bank accounts. And never risk more than you can afford to lose. Those words became my financial gospel. Natalie, bless her heart, was always a bit more free-spirited with money, but despite our different approaches, we were incredibly close. I admired her confidence, her ease in social situations. When she left for college, I cried for days, missing her protective presence and our late-night talks. For years later, I followed in her footsteps, working part-time to supplement my scholarships. Unlike Natalie, who bounced between majors, I found my niche in business administration, fascinated by how organizations worked. After graduation, I landed an entry-level job at a marketing firm and, through sheer grit, climbed my way up to office manager by 29. My career progress allowed me to save diligently, and last year, I hit a huge milestone, buying my own 2-bedroom condo. It was modest, but it was mine, a tangible symbol of all my hard work and financial discipline. Natalie, though, took a different path. After college, she drifted through various jobs, never quite finding her calling. 3 years ago, she met Greg at a friend's barbecue. Their relationship was a whirlwind. 6 months later, they were engaged. I was her maid of honor at their small, lovely wedding, giving a heartfelt speech about our unbreakable bond and welcoming Greg into our family. At first, I really thought Greg was good for Natalie. He was charismatic, charming, and seemed to absolutely adore her. He worked in sales for a telecom company, and while his income was commission-based and could fluctuate, they appeared to be doing well. Natalie took a part-time job at a clothing boutique, more for the employee discount and social interaction than out of financial necessity, or so I believed at the time. Our family stayed close after Natalie married. Sunday dinners at Mom and Dad's were a sacred tradition, and holidays were always spent together. But slowly, subtly, I started noticing changes in my sister. The Natalie who once prided herself on thrift store finds now talked about designer labels. She'd make comments about my practical car, suggesting I treat myself to something more luxurious. Greg, too, would often steer conversations toward money, asking probing questions about my salary or commenting on the market value of my condo. Back then, I just thought it was his sales background, his interest in finance. I missed the warning signs. "Your sister and I are thinking about investment properties," Greg announced one Sunday dinner, about 6 months ago. "Real estate is where true wealth is built." My parents nodded politely, but I saw them exchange a glance. Later, Dad quietly pulled me aside. "Investment requires knowledge and caution, Audrey," he warned. "I hope Greg knows what he's doing." Around that time, I'd started dating Tyler, a police officer I'd met when he responded to a minor break-in at my office. He was kind, steady, and shared my practical approach to life. Greg, though, seemed oddly competitive with Tyler, often interrupting him at family gatherings or dismissing his career choice as limiting. Tyler noticed it, but he graciously avoided confrontation for my sake. Looking back, I can see it now. Greg was meticulously assessing my financial position while projecting an image of prosperity that his and Natalie's actual finances simply didn't support. And my sister? She was becoming increasingly entangled in his worldview, where material possessions equaled success and family connections were just resources to be exploited. The last truly peaceful family gathering was my 30th birthday, just 4 months before everything exploded. My parents hosted a small dinner. Natalie gave me a beautiful handmade bracelet, a throwback to our childhood when we'd craft jewelry for each other. For a brief, beautiful moment, I saw my old sister, the one who valued sentimental connection over material worth. If only I had known how quickly our relationship would deteriorate from that point forward. The request that would ultimately shatter our family came on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Natalie called, her voice bubbling with excitement, inviting me to dinner at their apartment. "We have amazing news," she gushed. "And we want you to be the first to know." I arrived with a bottle of wine, half expecting a baby announcement. The apartment was unusually tidy, candles lit, a lavish meal prepared. Greg was unusually attentive, pulling out my chair, keeping my glass filled. "So, what's this big news?" I asked as Natalie served dessert, a homemade tiramisu, my absolute favorite. Greg and Natalie exchanged glances before he pulled out his phone, showing me photos of a stunning 2-story colonial house with a wraparound porch and a perfectly manicured lawn. "We found our dream home," Natalie explained, her eyes shining. "It has 4 bedrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and the master bath has this incredible soaking tub." "Wow, that looks gorgeous," I replied sincerely. "Are you seriously considering buying it?" "Not just considering," Greg said with a broad smile. "We put in an offer yesterday, and it was accepted this morning." I nearly choked on my dessert. The house looked like it would cost at least $500,000, far beyond what I knew they could afford based on their current jobs. Greg must have read my expression. "I know what you're thinking," he said smoothly. "But I'm in line for a major promotion next month. The regional director position is practically mine." This was the first I'd heard of any promotion. In fact, Greg's job history was, well, let's just say unstable. He'd changed companies twice, always promising a big promotion that never quite materialized. "That's great news," I said cautiously. "When would you close on the house?" "That's actually why we wanted to talk to you," Natalie interjected, reaching for my hand across the table. "The thing is, with Greg changing jobs recently, the bank needs a little extra security on the loan." My stomach tightened. Greg continued, "Your credit score is excellent, and you have that stable job history the banks love. We just need you to co-sign as a guarantor on the mortgage. It's just a formality." "Really? You wouldn't need to contribute anything financially?" The casual way they presented this enormous request stunned me. Being a guarantor would make me legally responsible for their mortgage if they defaulted. Given Greg's job instability and their apparent comfort with stretching beyond their means, this was far from a mere formality. "This is a big decision," I said carefully. "Can I have some time to think about it? Maybe review the details of what would be involved." A flash of annoyance crossed Greg's face before he masked it with a smile. "Of course, but we need to let the bank know by next week to keep our interest rate locked." On the drive home, my mind raced. Dad's financial cautions echoed in my head. I spent the next day researching what being a mortgage guarantor actually meant. The more I learned, the more alarmed I became. If Natalie and Greg missed payments, my own credit would be damaged. If they defaulted entirely, I would be responsible for their debt, potentially losing my own home and savings. I scheduled an appointment with my financial advisor, Linda, who didn't mince words. "Audrey, this would be an enormous risk," she warned. "From what you've told me about their financial situation and job history, I would strongly advise against it." 3 days after the dinner, I invited Natalie for coffee, hoping to have a reasonable conversation without Greg present. We met at our favorite cafe, and I tried to approach the topic gently. "I've been researching what being a guarantor means," I began. "It's actually a much bigger commitment than Greg made it sound like." Natalie stirred her latte slowly. "I know it sounds scary, but we would never put you in a bad position, Audrey. Greg is absolutely getting that promotion. But what if something unexpected happens?" I pressed. "What if the promotion doesn't come through, or one of you has a health issue?" "I just need to understand the contingency plan." "There you go again," she sighed, exasperated. "Always planning for the worst. Can't you just trust us?" "Trust me. This house means everything to us, for starting our family." "I do trust you," I assured her. "But this is business, and mixing family with major financial commitments can get complicated. Maybe there are other options, like waiting a few months until Greg has actually secured the promotion." Disappointment clouded her face, but she nodded. "I understand your concerns. Let me talk to Greg about alternatives." I thought the conversation had gone well, but that evening my phone buzzed with a text from Greg. "Natalie told me about your concerns. Thought you'd support your sister's happiness. Guess blood isn't as thick as water after all." The passive-aggressive message was just the beginning. When we gathered at my parents' house that Sunday, Greg was noticeably cold, offering only curt responses when I spoke. Natalie seemed caught in the middle, trying to maintain normal conversation while exchanging anxious glances with her husband. During dinner, I attempted to explain my position logically to both of them, suggesting alternatives like a smaller starter home or waiting until their financial situation was more stable. "We've done the math," Greg said sharply. "We can afford this house. We just need your signature to satisfy the bank's red tape." "If you've done the math, then surely you can show me the budget breakdown?" I suggested. "That would help me feel more comfortable with the arrangement." "So now we need to prove ourselves to you?" Greg's voice rose slightly. "Your sister isn't enough of a guarantee for you?" My parents exchanged concerned glances. Dad cleared his throat. "Financial decisions should never be rushed. Maybe all of you need more time to consider options." "There's no time," Greg snapped. "The housing market is competitive, and this opportunity won't wait." As the evening ended, Natalie hugged me stiffly. "I thought I could count on you," she whispered. The hurt in her voice pierced me deeply. My mother walked me to my car later. "Be careful, Audrey," she advised. "Your father and I have noticed Greg can be intense about getting his way. Whatever you decide, make sure it's what you truly believe is right." That night, I called Tyler and explained the situation. His concern was immediate. "Audrey, this raises some serious red flags," he said. "Financial entanglement is often the first step in controlling relationships. Just be careful, okay? And remember, saying no to something that makes you uncomfortable isn't the same as saying no to your sister." His words strengthened my resolve. I needed to protect myself while trying to preserve my relationship with Natalie. Little did I know how impossible that balance would become. 2 weeks passed with an uncomfortable silence between Natalie and me. I tried reaching out several times lunch, our usual weekend shopping trips, but received only brief, non-committal responses. Then, on a Tuesday morning, my cell phone rang while I was preparing for a staff meeting. "Audrey, it's me." Natalie's voice sounded strained. "The bank needs an answer by Friday. Greg and I have been patient, but we need to know if you're going to help us or not." "I've given this a lot of thought," I began carefully, "and I just don't think I can take on that level of financial risk right now." "Risk? What risk?" Her tone sharpened. "This isn't about risk, Audrey. This is about family loyalty. Remember when I loaned you $300 for your car repair in college? I didn't ask questions or worry about risk." The comparison between a small, short-term loan and a 30-year mortgage guarantee was so absurd that I was momentarily speechless. Before I could formulate a response, Natalie continued, "Mom and Dad are disappointed, too. They raised us to support each other." This surprised me. "Have they said that to you directly?" "They didn't have to. It's obvious how family is supposed to work," she retorted. "Greg says your boyfriend is probably poisoning you against us. Tyler has never liked Greg." The conversation deteriorated further, ending with Natalie in tears and me feeling both guilty and manipulated. I called my parents immediately after. As I suspected, they had never expressed disappointment in my decision. In fact, they had told Natalie and Greg to respect my choice. The next escalation came without warning. 2 days later, while I was conducting interviews for a new administrative assistant position, the receptionist called to say I had visitors. Stepping into the lobby, I found Natalie and Greg waiting, both dressed formally as though coming from a business meeting. "We need to talk to you," Greg stated firmly. "It cannot wait." Acutely aware of my professional environment, I led them to a small conference room. "I'm in the middle of interviews today." "What's so urgent?" Greg placed a folder on the table. "We brought the mortgage paperwork. All we need is your signature, and we can stop bothering you about this." I told Natalie my decision, I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm sorry, but it hasn't changed." Greg's face hardened. "Do you have any idea what this house means to us, to your sister? This is our future, our family we're talking about." "I understand that, but there are other houses, other options that wouldn't require a guarantor." "We don't want other options." His voice rose enough that I glanced anxiously at the door, hoping my colleagues couldn't hear. "This is the house we want, the neighborhood we need to be in for our future kids. Are you really going to deny your future nieces and nephews a safe place to grow up?" The emotional manipulation was blatant now. Natalie sat silently, letting Greg lead the attack. When she finally spoke, her words shocked me. "If you can't do this one thing for me, Audrey, then maybe we need to reevaluate our relationship. Sisters are supposed to be there for each other no matter what." I felt physically ill. "Natalie, this isn't about not wanting to help you. This is about making a sound financial decision that protects all of us." "Protects you, you mean?" Greg sneered. "Always looking out for yourself first, right?" When they finally left, I was shaking. I called Tyler during my lunch break and described the ambush. "This is getting out of hand," he said, concern evident in his voice. They're using emotional blackmail to pressure you into a legally binding financial commitment. Have you considered talking to a lawyer about this? A lawyer? They're family, not criminals, I protested. Audrey, financial coercion is a real thing, and Greg's behavior is raising serious concerns. Just be careful, okay, and maybe document these interactions going forward. That weekend, my parents invited everyone for dinner, hoping to diffuse tensions. The atmosphere was strained from the moment Natalie and Greg arrived. My mother tried valiantly to maintain normal conversation, asking about work and sharing neighborhood news. During dessert, Natalie deliberately brought up the house. We might lose our dream home because some people don't understand family commitment, she announced, staring pointedly at me. My father frowned. Natalie, we agreed not to discuss this tonight. Why not? It's all that matters right now, she insisted. Audrey is being selfish and everyone is tiptoeing around it. Financial decisions are personal, my mother interjected gently. Your sister has the right to make her own choices about legal commitments. So, you're taking her side, too? Natalie's voice cracked with emotion. There are no sides here, Dad said firmly. Just different perspectives on a business decision. Greg put his arm around Natalie. Come on, babe. It's clear where everyone stands. Your sister has her precious financial security, and we lose our future. But hey, at least she doesn't have to risk anything for family. The evening ended on that bitter note, with Natalie and Greg leaving abruptly. As they drove away, my mother squeezed my hand. Stay strong, sweetheart. This isn't really about the house. There's something else going on with them. Her intuition proved correct. The following week, I began receiving strange calls about credit checks I hadn't authorized. My bank contacted me about unusual activity on my accounts. Someone had been attempting to access my financial information, making me wonder if Greg was trying to gather leverage. My anxiety built to the point where I was having trouble sleeping. Tyler noticed the toll it was taking and suggested I take additional security measures, including changing all my passwords and setting up fraud alerts. This isn't normal family disagreement anymore, he warned. Greg is showing signs of financial desperation, which can be dangerous. Seeking clarity, I scheduled another appointment with my financial advisor. Linda had access to industry databases and, with my permission, conducted a deeper investigation. Audrey, there are some serious red flags here, she said gravely during our meeting. Greg has significant undisclosed debt. There are multiple maxed-out credit cards, a personal loan and collections, and a previous mortgage default from before his marriage to your sister. If you were to become their guarantor, you would be taking on far more risk than you realize. This information stunned me. Did Natalie know about Greg's financial history? Was this why they were so desperate for my guarantee? Either my sister was being deceived by her husband, or she was complicit in hiding this information from me. Armed with this knowledge, I made the final decision to refuse the guarantor request. I spent an evening preparing an information packet for Natalie and Greg, including alternative financing options, listings for more affordable homes in nice neighborhoods, and resources for first-time home buyer programs that might work for their situation. I truly believed that by offering solutions rather than just rejection, I could preserve my relationship with my sister while protecting myself financially. It was an approach born of hope and familial love, but it severely underestimated the desperation driving Greg's behavior and the extent to which Natalie had surrendered her independent judgment to her husband. It was a quiet Thursday evening when everything exploded. I just finished preparing that information packet, organizing it in a professional folder with tab sections and highlighted options. The material included alternatives to having a guarantor, such as first-time home buyer programs, listings for more affordable homes in safe neighborhoods, and contact information for mortgage brokers who specialized in challenging financial situations. I felt good about this approach. Instead of just saying no, I was offering constructive alternatives. Maybe this would help repair the growing rift with my sister while still maintaining my financial boundaries. I had even ordered delivery from Natalie's favorite Thai restaurant as I worked, thinking comfort food might help me relax after weeks of tension. At 9:30 in the evening, aggressive pounding on my door startled me. Through the peephole, I saw Greg's distorted face, his expression contorted with anger. Natalie stood behind him, her arms crossed tightly across her chest, looking tense. Audrey, open the door. We know you're in there. Greg shouted, pounding again. My heart raced as I considered my options. Not answering seemed impossible with the noise potentially disturbing my neighbors. Calling Tyler crossed my mind, but he was working a night shift and wouldn't be able to respond immediately. Just a minute. I called quickly, texting my location to Tyler with a brief, "Greg here," very angry, message before opening the door with the security chain still engaged. What's going on? Why are you pounding on my door this late? Greg's face was flushed, his eyes bloodshot. Take off the chain, Audrey. We need to talk. It's pretty late. Can this wait until tomorrow? I actually have some information I was going to bring over to you guys this weekend. Tomorrow? Greg laughed bitterly. There is no tomorrow. The bank called. We lost the house because you were too selfish to help us. Before I could respond, he slammed his shoulder against the door with enough force to break the security chain. I stumbled backward as Greg pushed his way into my apartment. Natalie, following behind him, looked pale but resolute. Greg, you need to leave right now, I said, trying to keep my voice steady while reaching for my phone. This isn't okay. He snatched the phone from my hand and threw it across the room. Nothing about this is okay. Do you have any idea what you've done to us, to your sister? I didn't do anything to you, I protested, backing away. I just couldn't take on the financial risk of being your guarantor. But I've been researching alternatives that might work better for your situation. I gestured toward the folder on my dining table. Greg followed my gaze, strode over, and flipped through its contents. Cheaper houses, first-time buyer programs. His voice dripped with contempt. You think we want your charity? Your condescending little solutions. He grabbed the folder and threw it against the wall, papers scattering across my living room floor. Greg, please. Natalie finally spoke, but not to restrain him. Let's just go. She's made her choice. No. I want her to understand what she has done. Greg insisted, turning back to me. You know what the real estate agent told us today? That the sellers accepted another offer. Do you know why? Because they got tired of waiting for our financing to come through. Financing that would have been secured weeks ago if you had just signed the papers. His face was inches from mine, now spittle flying as he shouted. I could smell alcohol on his breath. I'm sorry you lost the house, I said, trying to de-escalate the situation, but there will be other houses, better ones that you can afford without needing a guarantor. Afford? Greg's laugh was ugly. You think you know everything about our finances, about what we can afford? Actually, I do know some things, I said, my fear beginning to transform into anger. I know about the maxed-out credit cards, Greg, and the personal loan and collections, and your previous mortgage default. The color drained from his face. You had no right to look into my financial history. I had every right when you were asking me to guarantee hundreds of thousands of dollars. I countered. Did Natalie know about all this? Did you tell her before you pressured me to put my financial future on the line? I looked at my sister, whose expression had shifted from resolve to confusion. Natalie, did you know? Don't talk to her. Greg growled, stepping between us. This is between you and me now. No, it's not. I insisted, trying to move around him to see my sister. Natalie deserves to know the truth if she doesn't already. This isn't just about a house. Greg has serious financial problems that he's been hiding. Shut up, Greg roared. And before I could react, his hand shot out, shoving me hard against the wall. The back of my head hit with a sickening thud, momentarily disorienting me. Greg. Natalie gasped, but made no move to intervene. I tried to push away from the wall, but Greg grabbed my shoulders and slammed me back again. Pain exploded through my right shoulder as something gave way with an audible pop. I screamed in agony, which seemed to only further enrage him. You think you're so much better than us, with your perfect credit score and your responsible job? He snarled, his face inches from mine. Always judging, always thinking you know best. I raised my good arm instinctively to protect my face, but he caught my wrist and twisted it painfully. Stop it. You're hurting me. I cried out, looking desperately toward my sister. Natalie, please help me. What happened next was a blur of motion and pain. Greg's fist connected with my face, the impact sending a shock wave through my skull. I tasted blood as my lips split open. Another blow caught my cheekbone, and I felt something crunch. Warm liquid began flowing down my face as I collapsed to the floor, my dislocated shoulder sending waves of agony through my body. Through tear-blurred vision, I saw Natalie standing frozen, her hands covering her mouth, watching as her husband assaulted her sister. I reached toward her with my good arm. Natalie, please, I begged. She finally moved, taking a single step forward. Greg, that's enough. Let's go. Not to help me. Not to stop him. Just to leave. Greg stepped back, breathing heavily, looking down at me with contempt rather than remorse. You brought this on yourself, he spat. As they moved toward the door, I managed to choke out, Natalie, how can you let him do this? My sister paused in the doorway, her face a mask I couldn't recognize. The stranger wearing my sister's face looked at me coldly and said the words that would haunt me. "You should have just signed the mortgage." Then they were gone, leaving me bleeding on my apartment floor, betrayed by the person I had trusted most my entire life. The physical pain was excruciating, but it paled in comparison to the shattering of my heart as I realized that the sister I loved had chosen to side with my attacker rather than help me in my moment of greatest need. I don't know how long I lay on my apartment floor, drifting between shock and waves of pain. Blood from my face had formed a small puddle beside me, and every slight movement sent lightning bolts of agony through my dislocated shoulder. My phone lay shattered where Greg had thrown it, useless for calling help. Eventually, survival instinct overrode the pain. I needed medical attention. Using only my left arm, I managed to drag myself to a sitting position against the wall, fighting waves of dizziness and nausea. The apartment swam in and out of focus as I assessed my options. My neighbors were mostly young professionals who kept to themselves. Screaming for help might work, but I wasn't sure I could make enough noise in my condition. My landline had been disconnected months ago as I exclusively used my cell phone. The only viable option was to somehow get to my car and drive to my parents' house, about 15 minutes away. Each movement was an exercise in agony as I crawled to where my purse had fallen during the attack. Finding my keys brought tears of relief. Getting to my feet nearly caused me to black out, and I had to lean against the wall for several minutes, breathing through clenched teeth until the spinning room stabilized. The journey from my second-floor apartment to the parking lot was a nightmare of pain and determination. I could only use the railing with my left hand, which meant descending sideways, one agonizing step at a time. Twice I nearly fell when my knees buckled. By the time I reached my car, my blouse was soaked with blood and sweat. Driving one-handed with a dislocated shoulder and a possible concussion was dangerous. But I saw no alternative. I drove slowly, focusing intently on the road through my one eye that wasn't swelling shut. Each traffic light felt like an eternity. Every bump in the road sent fresh waves of pain through my body. I kept talking aloud to stay conscious. Almost there. Just a few more blocks. Stay awake. Keep driving. Almost there. The 15-minute drive took nearly 40 minutes as I navigated cautiously, fighting through pain and disorientation. When I finally turned onto my parents' street, relief nearly overwhelmed me. Their porch light was on, a beacon of safety in my darkest moment. I parked haphazardly in their driveway and staggered to their front door. My attempt to ring the doorbell turned into me slumping against the door frame, my strength finally deserting me. I weakly knocked, leaving smears of blood on their white door. The porch light seemed to brighten painfully, and I heard my father's voice through the door. "Who is it?" "Dad," I managed to whisper. "It's me." The door swung open, and I will never forget the horror that transformed my parents' faces as they saw me. My mother's scream seemed to come from far away. "Audrey, oh my God, what happened to you?" My father's strong arms caught me as my legs finally gave out. "Greg," I said, my words slurring through swollen lips. "He attacked me." Natalie watched. That was all I managed before collapsing completely, the safety of my childhood home allowing me to finally surrender to the pain and shock. I vaguely registered being lowered gently to the floor as my mother frantically dialed 911. "My daughter has been assaulted," I heard her saying through tears. "She's bleeding badly and her shoulder looks dislocated. Please hurry." My father's voice was tight with rage and fear as he knelt beside me, carefully cradling my head. "Who did this, Audrey? Did you say Greg did this to you?" I tried to nod, which sent fresh pain shooting through my skull. "Mortgage," I mumbled. "Because I wouldn't sign." "Dear God," my mother sobbed, joining us on the floor. Her face is barely recognizable. The wait for the ambulance felt eternal. My mother held a cold compress to my face while my father kept talking to me, trying to keep me conscious. The flashing lights of the emergency vehicles finally illuminated the room in pulses of red and blue. 2 police officers arrived with the paramedics. As the medical team began assessing my injuries, one officer knelt beside me. "Ma'am, can you tell me who did this to you?" His voice was gentle but professional. "Greg Walsh," I whispered. "My sister's husband." "And where did this happen?" "My apartment, about an hour ago." The officer's face hardened as he took in the extent of my injuries. "And you drove yourself here in this condition?" I managed a slight nod. "Jesus," he muttered before catching himself. "I mean, that shows incredible strength, ma'am. We'll need a formal statement, but let's get you medical attention first." As the paramedics transferred me to a gurney, I heard the officer speaking quietly to his partner. "Call it in." Aggravated assault, possibly attempted murder given the extent of injuries. Suspect is Gregory Walsh, brother-in-law of victim. The ambulance ride was a blur of pain and medical terminology: blood pressure dropping, possible orbital fracture, dislocated shoulder, concussion protocol. They gave me something for the pain that made the world soften around the edges without completely removing me from it. In the emergency room, a team of medical professionals swarmed around me. X-rays confirmed the dislocated shoulder, and the procedure to reset it was excruciating despite medication. My face required multiple stitches, and the ophthalmologist expressed concern about potential damage to my right eye from the orbital bone fracture. Sometime during this medical whirlwind, Tyler appeared, still in his police uniform, his face ashen as he took in my condition. He must have come straight from his shift after seeing my text. "Audrey," he choked, taking my hand gently. "I am so sorry. I got your message but was handling an accident scene. By the time I was free and tried to call you, you didn't answer. Not your fault," I managed through swollen lips. His professional demeanor cracked, and I saw tears in his eyes before he blinked them away. "The responding officers are colleagues of mine. They're already looking for Greg. Do you want me to step out while you give your statement, or would you like me to stay?" "Stay," I whispered. "Please stay." The detective who took my initial statement was compassionate but thorough, recording every detail of the attack. When I described Natalie's response and her parting words, his pen paused momentarily over his notepad. "Your sister witnessed the entire assault and did nothing to intervene or call for help?" "Yes," I confirmed, the betrayal still fresh and raw. She watched, then left with him. My parents arrived at the hospital after giving their own statements about my condition when I reached their home. My father's face was tight with controlled fury. My mother streamed with tears. They spoke with the doctors, arranged for my overnight admission for observation due to the concussion, and assured me they would handle everything. As the pain medication finally pulled me toward sleep, I heard Tyler speaking quietly with my parents in the hospital room. "This goes beyond a domestic dispute," he was saying. "The level of violence, the premeditation in going to her apartment, breaking in, essentially, we're looking at serious felony charges." "And Natalie?" my mother asked, her voice breaking. "Our own daughter watched this happen and did nothing?" "There may be charges for her as well," Tyler replied grimly. "At minimum, failure to report a crime, possibly accessory after the fact." How did we not see this coming? My father's voice was hollow with guilt. How did we miss what kind of man he truly was? "Abusers are often skilled at presenting different faces to different people," Tyler explained gently. "And financial desperation can trigger violence in people with underlying control issues." Their voices faded as I drifted into a medicated sleep, my last conscious thought being wonder at how completely my life had shattered in a single evening, and how the sister I had loved my entire life had become a stranger watching me bleed without lifting a finger to help. The morning after the assault brought harsh fluorescent lights, the sterile smell of hospital disinfectant, and the full reality of what had happened. My parents were already there when I awoke, my mother dozing in the visitor's chair while my father stood at the window, staring out with the rigid posture of a man containing volcanic rage. A nurse came in to check my vitals and change the dressing on my face. She held up a small mirror, and I hardly recognized the person staring back at me. My right eye was swollen, completely shut, surrounded by deep purple bruising that extended across my cheekbone. Stitches zigzagged across my eyebrow and upper lip. My face was so distorted by swelling that I looked like a grotesque caricature of myself. "The swelling will go down significantly over the next few days," the nurse assured me kindly, and the plastic surgeon did an excellent job with the stitches. "The scars should be minimal." Scars. I would have scars from this. Physical reminders of my sister's betrayal that I would see every time I looked in a mirror. The thought brought fresh tears, which stung the cuts on my face. To police. Officers arrived mid-morning, neither of them Tyler, to avoid any conflict of interest given our relationship. One introduced herself as Detective Sarah Martinez, a member of the Domestic Violence Unit. Her partner, Officer Jenkins, had kind eyes that contrasted with his imposing physical presence. "Miss Moore, I know this is difficult, but we need to take your formal statement about what happened last night," Detective Martinez explained. "We will need to photograph your injuries as well, if that is all right." For the next hour, I recounted every detail of the attack, from the moment Greg pounded on my door to Natalie's final devastating comment before they left me bleeding on the floor. Officer Jenkins documented my injuries with a camera, his jaw tightening as he photographed the extensive bruising on my shoulder and face. "Have they found Greg yet?" I asked when they had finished. Detective Martinez shook her head. Not yet, but we have officers at their apartment and your sister's workplace. There's an alert out for his vehicle. And my sister? The officers exchanged glances. We would like to speak with her as well. Her role in this incident needs clarification. After they left, my father finally spoke. The locksmith is changing your apartment locks today. You will stay with us when you are released until we figure out something more permanent. Dad, I can't impose on you and Mom like that. This is not a discussion, Audrey, he said firmly. That man knows where you live. Until he is in custody, you are not staying alone. His protectiveness nearly broke me. Where was this protection when I was being beaten? Why had Natalie not shown even a fraction of this concern? The next few days passed in a blur of medical evaluations, pain management, and official paperwork. I was released from the hospital with my arm in a sling, prescriptions for pain medication and antibiotics, and instructions for concussion recovery. The prosecutor's office contacted me about pressing charges, making it clear that, given the severity of the assault, they would proceed regardless of whether I wanted to or not. This level of violence cannot go unanswered, the assistant district attorney explained during her hospital visit. The state has an interest in prosecuting violent offenders, regardless of family connections. On my third day home at my parents' house, the police finally apprehended Greg at a motel 30 miles outside of town. Natalie was with him. The news brought conflicting emotions, relief that he was in custody, but fresh pain at the confirmation that my sister had chosen to flee with my attacker rather than check if I was even alive. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, I filed for a restraining order against both Greg and, with tremendous heartache, Natalie. The court granted it immediately based on the police report and medical documentation. My colleagues at work were incredibly supportive, arranging for me to work remotely during my recovery. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months rallied around me, dropping off meals and offering rides to medical appointments. Tyler spent every free moment by my side, his steady presence a balm to my shattered sense of security. The night before the preliminary hearing, my mother received a call from Natalie. She put it on speakerphone so my father and I could hear. Mom, this has all gone too far. Natalie's voice sounded thin and desperate. Greg made a mistake, but Audrey is blowing this out of proportion. She needs to drop these charges. My father made a strangled sound of disbelief. My mother's voice was ice cold when she responded. A mistake? Your husband broke into your sister's home and beat her so severely she needed to be hospitalized. She drove herself to our house with a concussion and dislocated shoulder because you left her bleeding on the floor. You don't understand, Natalie pleaded. Greg has lost his job over this. We could lose everything. And Audrey could have lost her life. My father erupted. Have you seen what he did to her face, to her body? Your sister may have permanent damage to her eye socket. I know it looks bad, Natalie admitted. But if she drops the charges, Greg will get anger management counseling. Natalie, listen to me carefully, my mother said, her voice trembling with emotion. Your husband committed a serious crime. He belongs in jail. If you continue to support him after what he did, you are no daughter of mine. The silence that followed was deafening. When Natalie finally spoke, her voice was cold. I see who you have chosen. Don't expect to hear from us again unless Audrey comes to her senses. The line went dead, leaving us sitting in stunned silence. My mother's hands shook as she placed the phone down. My father wrapped his arm around her shoulders as she began to sob. How did we raise a daughter who could be so cruel? She whispered. Where did we go wrong with her? This is not your fault, I said, reaching for her hand across the table. Greg has been manipulating her for years. We just didn't see it clearly until now. The preliminary hearing the next day was my first time seeing Greg and Natalie since the attack. Entering the courtroom with Tyler and my parents flanking me protectively, I felt physically ill at the sight of them. Greg sat beside his attorney in a suit that seemed deliberately too large, perhaps to make him appear smaller and less threatening. Natalie sat directly behind him, her face a mask of resentment. When the bailiff read the charges, aggravated assault, breaking and entering, criminal threatening, and attempted coercion, the gravity of the situation seemed to finally register on Greg's face. His attorney entered a not guilty plea, requesting bail despite the prosecutor's argument that Greg posed a flight risk and danger to the community. The judge set bail at $100,000 with strict conditions, including GPS monitoring and explicit orders to have no contact with me or my family. As Greg was led away to process the bail requirements, Natalie caught my eye across the courtroom. There was no remorse in her gaze, only cold accusation, as though I were the one who had destroyed the family. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered, alerted to the case by police records. My father shielded me from their cameras while Tyler helped me into the car. My bruised face was plastered on the local news that evening, a grim testament to the violence that had erupted over what they called a family financial dispute. Over the following weeks, as my physical injuries began to heal, the emotional trauma intensified. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in both physical trauma and family betrayal. She diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress disorder, explaining that the betrayal by my sister had compounded the trauma of the physical attack. When someone we trust implicitly harms us or allows harm to come to us, she explained, it damages our fundamental ability to feel safe in the world. The recovery process involves not just healing from the event itself, but rebuilding your sense of safety and trust. Greg's attorney approached my lawyer. With a plea offer, Greg would plead guilty to a lesser charge of simple assault if I agreed to make no victim impact statement. I refused immediately. The full truth needed to be on record, not just for my own healing, but to ensure that Greg faced appropriate consequences for his actions. As the trial date approached, the pressure from Natalie intensified. She sent letters to our parents, claiming I was destroying their family over one bad moment. She attempted to contact my friends, painting me as vindictive and exaggerating my injuries. When these efforts failed, she showed up at my parents' house late one night, hysterical and demanding to see me. My father called the police, reporting her for violating the restraining order. When the officers arrived, they found Natalie pounding on the door, screaming that I had ruined her life. Her arrest for violating the protective order was the final fracture in our already splintered family. The trial itself was mercifully brief. The evidence was overwhelming: my medical records, photographs of my injuries, my testimony, and most damning of all, security footage from my apartment building's hallway showing Greg breaking in and Natalie following him without coercion. The prosecutor also presented evidence of Greg's financial deception, including documentation of the hidden debt and previous mortgage default that had triggered his desperate attempt to secure my guarantee. When it was my turn to testify, I looked directly at Greg as I described the attack in detail. Then I turned to where Natalie sat and recounted her final words to me as I lay bleeding. You should have just signed the mortgage. The courtroom fell silent at this revelation of callousness. Greg's attorney attempted to paint the incident as a momentary loss of control by an otherwise upstanding citizen under financial stress. The strategy failed spectacularly when the prosecution presented evidence of Greg's previous anger incidents that had never been reported to police. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. At the sentencing hearing 2 weeks later, the judge did not mince words. Mr. Walsh, you committed a brutal assault against a family member who simply refused to put herself in financial jeopardy for your benefit. You have shown no genuine remorse, and the court is particularly disturbed by your attempt to minimize your actions. The court sentenced him to 8 years in state prison. As Greg was led away in handcuffs, Natalie's anguished cry echoed through the courtroom. Not for me, her sister, who still carried the scars of her husband's violence, but for the man who had inflicted those scars. In that moment, I accepted what I had been fighting to deny. The sister I had loved was gone, replaced by someone I no longer knew or wanted in my life. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by my parents, Tyler, and friends who had supported me throughout the ordeal, I faced the reporters' cameras with my head held high, my scars visible, a testament to both violence endured and justice achieved. 6 months after the sentencing, physical therapy had restored most of the function in my shoulder, though certain movements still triggered twinges of pain. The plastic surgeon had done remarkable work minimizing the facial scarring, but a thin white line above my right eyebrow and another at the corner of my lip remained visible reminders of that night. The deeper scars, the ones nobody could see, were healing more slowly. My parents had helped me find a new apartment in a secure building with 24-hour security and no public access to resident floors. I had initially resisted such extreme measures, not wanting to live in fear. But my therapist helped me understand the difference between fear and prudent caution. Creating physical safety is an essential part of your healing journey, she explained during one of our weekly sessions. It's not about living in fear, but about respecting your body's need for security while your mind processes the trauma. The nightmares had decreased from nightly occurrences to perhaps once a week. I no longer jumped at every unexpected knock or flinched when someone raised their voice in excitement. These were small victories, hard-won through consistent therapy and the unwavering support of those around me. Tyler had been my rock throughout the recovery process, never pushing, but always present. Our relationship had deepened through the crisis, his patience and understanding creating a safe space for my healing. When he surprised me with a weekend getaway to a lakeside cabin 3 months after the trial, I found myself able to truly relax for the first time since the attack. "I'm proud of you," he said as we sat watching the sunset over the water. "Not just for surviving, but for how you've handled everything. Your strength amazes me every day." My career had become another anchor in my recovery. 2 months after the trial, I received an unexpected promotion to operations director, a position that came with both greater responsibility and flexibility to continue my therapy appointments. My colleagues, who had rallied around me during the darkest days, celebrated this professional advancement as another step in my journey forward. Natalie remained a complicated absence in my life. After Greg's sentencing, she had moved in with a friend, unable to maintain the apartment on her part-time income alone. According to my mother, who maintained minimal contact with her, Natalie had finally filed for divorce 3 months into Greg's sentence when the reality of their financial situation became impossible to ignore. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I received a letter with her handwriting on the envelope. For several minutes, I simply held it, uncertain whether opening it would represent progress or a setback in my healing. Eventually, curiosity won out. "Audrey," the letter began. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve to ask for it, but I need you to know that I am getting help now. My therapist says I was in an emotionally abusive relationship that distorted my thinking and loyalties. That is not an excuse for what I did or failed to do that night. Nothing can excuse that. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to understand how I became someone who could watch her sister be hurt and do nothing. If you ever want to talk, I would welcome it. If not, I understand. Either way, I am sorry. Natalie." The letter stirred complicated emotions. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as too little, too late. Another part recognized the courage it took to acknowledge such a profound moral failure. I showed it to my therapist during our next session. "How does this letter make you feel?" she asked after reading it. Confused, I admitted. Part of me wants to believe she's genuinely sorry, that the sister I grew up with is still in there somewhere. But I also don't know if I can ever trust her again, or if I even want to try. "Reconciliation is not an obligation," she reminded me. "It's a choice, and one that should be made based on what supports your healing, not on family expectations or guilt. Whatever you decide, it should be on your timeline, not hers." I decided not to respond immediately, giving myself permission to sit with the complexity of my feelings without forcing a resolution. This was one of many new boundaries I was learning to establish in my life. My parents had their own healing journey. The fracture in their family had left them questioning their parenting, their values, even their understanding of their own children. They had started attending a support group for parents of adult children in crisis, finding solace in shared experiences and wisdom. "We always thought family meant supporting each other no matter what," my father reflected during a quiet dinner at their house. "Now we understand that true support sometimes means holding people accountable, even when it hurts." My mother reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "We will always regret not seeing the warning signs with Greg, but we are so proud of how you've handled this, Audrey. You showed us what real strength looks like." As my confidence rebuilt, I found myself drawn to sharing what I had learned. 6 months after the trial, I approached the local community college about hosting a financial education workshop specifically designed for women. The focus was on financial independence as a form of self-protection, covering everything from building emergency funds to understanding the legal implications of cosign loans and joint accounts. The first workshop drew 30 participants. By the third monthly session, we had to move to a larger venue to accommodate over 70 women. Some came from the local domestic violence shelter. Others were students or working professionals. The common thread was a desire for financial knowledge as a pathway to security and independence. Tyler attended the fourth workshop, sitting quietly in the back of the room. Afterward, as I gathered my materials, he approached with a small velvet box in his hand. "I was going to plan some elaborate proposal," he said, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. "But watching you tonight, seeing how you've transformed your pain into purpose, I couldn't wait another day to ask you to share your life with me." The ring was simple and elegant, a single diamond in a classic setting. It represented everything I had come to value: clarity, strength, and enduring beauty that emerges from pressure. My immediate instinct was to say yes, but I paused, honoring the promise I had made to myself about making deliberate rather than reactive decisions. Can I think about it? I asked gently. Not because I don't love you, but because I want to be sure I'm saying yes for the right reasons, not from fear or dependency. His smile was tender with understanding. Take all the time you need. The question will still be here when you're ready to answer. 2 weeks later, after deep reflection and a candid discussion with my therapist about healthy versus reactive relationship choices, I gave him my answer over dinner at my new apartment. The yes came not from fear or need, but from a place of strength and genuine choice. As spring turned to summer, I found myself volunteering at the same domestic violence shelter whose residents had attended my workshops. Once a week, I sat with women whose stories echoed aspects of my own, offering not just practical advice, but living proof that survival and rebuilding were possible. The hardest lesson I learned, I told a group during one session, was that family is not defined by blood or obligation. True family consists of people who protect rather than endanger you, who respect your boundaries rather than demand their violation, who value your well-being as much as their own desires. 1 year to the day after the attack, I stood before the bathroom mirror and really looked at my scars. The physical marks had faded significantly, though they would never disappear completely. I traced the line above my eyebrow gently, no longer seeing it as a mark of victimhood, but as evidence of survival. That evening, Tyler and I hosted a small dinner party at my apartment, a deliberate reclaiming of space that had once been violated. My parents were there, along with close friends and colleagues who had supported my recovery. Conspicuously absent was Natalie, though I had finally responded to her letter the week before, suggesting we meet for coffee someday soon. A small opening toward whatever new relationship might be possible. As we raised glasses in a toast, I looked around at these people who had become my chosen family, who had demonstrated through actions rather than mere words what love and support truly meant. The journey had been brutal. The loss is profound, but standing there, surrounded by genuine connection, I recognized the precious wisdom that had emerged from trauma. To boundaries that protect, courage that rebuilds, and love that respects, I offered as a toast. And to all of you who showed me what true family means. Later, as guests departed and Tyler helped clean up, he asked if I was okay, noticing my momentary quiet reflection. I'm more than okay, I realized aloud. For the first time since it happened, I feel genuinely at peace. Not because everything is perfect or because all wounds are healed, but because I know now that I can trust myself to protect what matters, to choose wisely, and to rebuild no matter what falls apart. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own well-being?